Hello, I'm ED-SKaR, and on our little live stream today we'll be painting some Gaunt ghosts. Look at that little chap, slightly out of focus as always. It's actually some somewhat interesting, completely uninteresting models today, because a lot of the parts featured here are Thank you to Foxymit's Chief Research for the Order Redexus for checking my sound, and also hello Paul Allen, who is also in the chat. So the models today, several of the parts are from Grandpa Werewolf, who sent over a whole great big pile of bits, particularly the arms. In a lot of cases, the Catechan arms are from that bundle. The heads, not this one so much, but the others, are the fancy heads from the new Cadian kind of updated sprue. And that was Paul in the chat who picked out that for me. Although we actually got them for the drop troops. And, of course, all four models today I noticed, so I didn't do this deliberately, it's just how things have gone. All four of these have Devic Designs cloaks. So this is a replacement torso. So all of the rest of the model, the legs, the arms, the head, the weapons, that's all official Games Workshop. But then the torso and the cloak are a replacement piece with a cloak. And this one's actually one of the more interesting ones because this is my first comms officer. I think I need more comms officers. I've kind of been sorely lacking them. So what I'll actually do is, if I get rid of this guy, I'll start with the Voxcaster, because I'm just seeing that horrible mold line all the way down his arm. Let's get rid of that mold line before we get started. So where to begin on this chap? Well, one thing I need to decide is what colours I want to paint the Voxcaster, because this is the first comms trooper I'll have painted for the ghosts. And the temptation is to paint it with a military green casing, but the cloak will also be green. And so would it maybe be better to paint it in a slightly different colour to make it a little more interesting? Let's get some black down on the uniform, and let's get some green down after that on the cloak, and we can make a decision in a bit. And I've got a few models to paint, so I can get a fairly big blob. This paint's still fairly watery. Try and have my wet palette in the corner of screen. Yeah, I've noticed that this particular brush, even though it has been absolutely excellent in the past, yeah, there's one, is starting to snap hairs or wear away some of the bristles. And because of that, it doesn't behave quite like it once did. I quite like the way that it behaved as it once did. Avoiding arguments of sub-assembly painting, there's an awful lot of this model that is quite difficult to get to. He says, desperately trying to paint the underneath of the boots. I'm painting the soles of his boots with this much care and attention. I said I could put quite a bit of paint on the wet palette because I'm going to be painting a few models today. However, they seem to have, or the paint seems to have kind of been a lot thinner than I was expecting, and I've basically used it all up, and I haven't even finished the base coat for this one model. Let's get so at least try and get the rest of the boots. Oh, yep, there you go. Wrecked that. I want to paint the front of the boots. Because there's the kind of buckle section to this, to the Cadian boots. I'll paint the front as if they are gators? Not alligators, boot gators. I think that's what they're called. Just a clasp around the top of the boots to stop water getting in. And for interest of the model, I shall paint them in a different colour to the boots and the uniform, the trousers, just because it breaks up the colours. Yeah, so that paint is straight out of the pot, and it's that thin. And I've dried the top of my wet palette, so it's not like residual water's getting in. That's the consistency that I'm dealing with from the pot, which is not ideal. It is just about flowing fairly well. It's not quite at that point where it starts to kind of pull like a wash and disappear off into all the recesses. And because it's black, probably one of the best covering paints. One layer is still well enough. I'm going to be blackwashing the uniform anyway, so it's not really a big deal. It just adds to the contrast. Let's see, how much of a mix does the grey need? The grey, on the other hand, feels like a paste. Much thicker, much more what I'm used to working with. Right, let's throw a spot grey over there. Get some really simple basic highlights on the uniform. And as I have said before several times, I can be pretty fast and messy with these. I want to be a little bit darker, but when I put the wash over, the greys get tinted into a much darker black, so I can highlight quite bright and it will still end up being fairly dark, kind of looking like black. But also I don't necessarily have to worry too much about blending because the wash, again, tints everything and kind of unifies it a little bit. It's a very quick and messy way of painting black. There are better ways of painting black, I won't argue against that. Find me one that looks better, that takes less time. Bet you can. Right, let's run up some green and some drinking water. Everyone in the chat better be drinking water. Mix up this one as well. So I want to see about the cloak. Well, I want to see about the Voxcaster. What colour I want to paint it, because the cloak's going to be green. So I probably don't want to. Coke Zero. That's fine. That's acceptable. I'm not getting my cola ration at the moment because, generally speaking, we're walking to the shops usually twice a week. But the amount that we can carry is quite limited, and so trying to bring back these huge 2-litre bottles, yeah, it's a little bit impractical, but water's fine too. I do generally get them when I go to Wargames Workshop to play some games, various things. Played a couple of games of Bolt Action recently, which is good fun. I finally won a game, actually. I won against the Americans. Actually had a pretty epic moment at the end of, I think it was actually a game against the German army, which I lost against, but I had, it was fairly even matchup on my left flank. Hello Nicholas, how you doing? I have abused one of your cloaks and put a Voxcaster on it. If you actually see there, I've just cut the comms unit at an angle to glue it on. It kind of works though. It's good enough for a 5-point model. Ah, okay. I'll keep my my story of officer on officer combat until later on, because Nicholas has asked, where does the ED-SKaR name come from? Where does my name come from? And that is an interesting and very old story. The really interesting bit of the story is why it's upper and lower case in the way that it is, and a lot of websites can't render it properly. The short version is that the term ED-SKaR in the Orc language means headshot or head wound. Literally a scar on your head. Speaking like a Londoner. That's London, England, not London, Ontario. And I had a very particular character, an orc character from back in 3rd edition Warhammer 40k. Because I had a pretty cool and pretty standard way of building my war boss back then, which doesn't work anymore because the way that characters are built has massively changed since between 3rd and 9th. Which is kind of a shame, but I barely play it, so it doesn't really matter. But I had this very specific list of equipment that I would pick for my war boss. And for ED-SKaR, who's obviously bigger and better than a war, I'm not just a war boss. I'm bigger than a war boss, bigger and meaner and greener. And so I sort of doubled everything up. It's not quite that simple. But kind of to simplify it down for the story, I kind of doubled up on all of the weapons options that my warlord, that my war boss would take to scale it up to for ED-SKaR. So instead of having one big shooter, kind of held like a rifle, you would have two. One underslung under each arm. Sort of similar to Marinus Calgar, but without the power fists. And instead of having a bionic arm, which my warlord had a kind of a wounded arm that was augmented up to repair it, he had two extra arms. So he was effectively, imagine Dr. Octopus, kind of Adeptus Mechanicus Mechadroids, but before Mechadroids existed. But the important part is the bionic bonce, or bionic head, which gave a, I think it was a 5+ invulnerable save. Or it might have been a 4+. Not sure, one or the other. And while I wasn't scaling that up in terms of the rules, I wanted to scale it up in terms of the model. And so ED-SKaR ended up with a hideous wound across the face. I took a craft knife, and this is back in the days when the war boss model was metal. So big pewter model, and I take a craft knife and gouge this chunk out of it. And I used green stuff to make a scar. And for anyone who recognizes the orc language, that kind of scar symbol, or if you imagine a tally 5, kind of 4 lines with a line through them all, that refers to toughness, strength, that kind of meaning. And that in the orc language is scar. And so he has the word scar built out of green stuff on his head as a kind of staples holding his face together. Which I thought was pretty cool. And the name stuck. Oh no. So Paul says the stream's cut out. Is anyone else having issues? Check things at my end. So YouTube's claiming that I've got good connection. 0 packet loss. Could probably lower the bitrate, although I'm using a fairly low bitrate to begin with, so it's probably not going to help. Let me know how that continues, because that might be a problem that I might not be able to do anything about it. 360p. That's a client side issue. If it was server side, then it would still be the same resolution. It would just be choppy. So it's probably, you're at work, aren't you? So it's probably your connection there. You want me to leave the stream and check my directs? Yeah. What's that? Is that a lump? There's a lump in my paint. Eesh. Serves me right for using weak old paint from my wet palette. That's too thin. That's better. Yeah, let me know if it drops again. Like I say, I'm not 100% sure if there is anything I can do about it, but I can at least check and see if there's anything on my side that corresponds. So, if I can show this, that means resizing stuff. Hang on, let me download it. Because what I think I can do is throw up an image. So here is the unofficial Devic Designs representation of ED-SKaR. This is how ED-SKaR would appear in Imperial propaganda pictures. That is hilarious and completely wrong, but that is exactly what would happen with Imperial propaganda. Right. Let's get rid of that and back to this model. Thanks for that. That's that's pretty fun. I'll actually I'll dig out the model at some point and send you that to see what he looks like in reality. We've got enough down on the model to make a decision about the radio. And you know what? I think green might still be a good option. Because even though the kind of... Where am I focusing it? Give me focus. Give me focus. Please. Give me focus. There we go. Close enough. Even if these panels, the big panel here and the big panel here, even if I do those in green and maybe some of this as well, this is going to be metal, this is going to be metal. I might do that in green, but I can paint all of these cables and wires in different colours as well. And I think that will actually break it up enough that green still works. And I'm going to go with that logic because as soon as I make that decision, I have to stick with it for the rest of my army. I mean, there's only going to be 6. I think I've got 6. Actually, I think I've got 4. Because I know I need one for Darulin. He needs comms. Is there anyone else that needs comms? I think it's just Darulin, who's so Darulin is Master of Ordnance from the Highness Sir Armaduke, which is one of the special characters we are planning to include with the Tanith Fan Codex. And there's some excitement about the Tanith Fan Codex at the moment because Jamis Broad, who is running the Fan Codex, has released the kind of alpha version data cards for pretty much all of the units that we want to include. Certainly not a finished codex, but you can build an army and actually use it in a game. Which is pretty cool. But not only that, over on Back to the Brush, on Wednesday of this week, I will have an interview with Jamis Broad about the Fan Codex, about the kind of alpha release, and we basically go through all of the unit choices that we've decided on. Yeah, I think that's, while it is still a lot of green, I don't think it's too much green. Once we've got all of the, well, the helmet needs to be painted black, and all of the antenna and stuff will be metal, and I can spend the rest of my life detailing all of this if I really wanted to. I probably don't. Actually, let's do the head because I've completely missed the head. And black for the helmet. Silver dry brush. Paul Allen says to use a silver dry brush on the Vox unit to make it stand out against the cloak, which is actually a good idea. The cloak will get the camo pattern, and so giving the Vox unit some weathering will also pull it in a different direction visually. And yeah, I'm not too worried about it clashing or kind of disappearing into the cloak, as much as that is what camouflage is for. Haha. yeah, the different ways of painting it will make it look different enough. It's not going to be long before I break off that antenna doing that. It's one of the things about this painting handle I have to keep being careful of, is that hands and swords and arms and antenna and spears particularly, they do kind of pop out. And every now and again I lose one, just snap it off. I did that with Gaunt actually, the metal, the original Gaunt, which was caught on video. It's one of my first ever Gaunt's Ghost videos, which is over a year ago now. Or at least I think it's over a year ago. Yeah, probably. Does it matter? Probably not. Yeah. Yeah. I've just noticed something. Now that I've picked out the leather brown. Not only does this model not have a belt, because the Cadian legs, like the Cadian kit, has the belt in the wrong place. Almost every kit that separates at the waist, the belt is on the legs piece, and the torso does not have a belt. Divic Designs torso, which this is, matches that paradigm, but the Cadian legs do not. However, not only is there no belt, this guy doesn't have his straight silver. I guess he's not going to know where to put the straight silver if he doesn't have a belt, but it's not good. He's lost his bayonet. He's going to get in trouble. Commissar will have him on charges of losing equipment. Not just any equipment, the regimental dagger of all things. Totally unacceptable. Alright. One thing I like to do with the gold stuff is to actually undercoat it in a brown. That way, even if kind of the gold is pretty bad, which kind of both of my gold paints are pretty bad, it's still, the result still looks fairly good. Alright, let's ruin all our hard work and throw a metallic over pretty much the whole rest of the model. So switch brushes. Give it a good old shake. Okay. Last gun first. it's doing that kind of sparkly thing. It actually looks even worse on camera than it does in real life. I've noticed a few different metallic paints do this kind of thing where it's like the micro flakes in the paint sort of don't quite behave how they should, and you get this, rather than being shiny, they end up being sparkly. And doesn't look very good. I do have a brighter silver that I use for highlights on metallics, and that one behaves a little better. But that's all of that, so let's start working out how much of this gets to be metallic. Handles on the side are a good easy option. Fittings for some of the cablings are big enough to pick out. This gauge thing on the side. Interestingly, this section here, kind of this little gauge and the loop. One of my comms officers will not have that section because it's probably going to be Derillian's one actually, just to show that his has like a different pattern of, or a different setup at the very least of radio. But that piece went to sweepers, which is something that you don't really get in 40k anymore, or at least on the tabletop game. Minesweepers and that kind of technician which do come up in some books, and famously Shoghi Domor, who was wounded in the first book. So I'm turning this around a lot because this is very, very small things that I'm trying to get the brush into. Shoghi Domor in the first book was wounded in the eyes and had both of them replaced. And the augment that he had was very, or too many of the other Tanith appeared to be quite insect-like. Specifically the Shoghi insect from Tanith. And so he got the nickname. This paint's really not behaving. This Just everything just has this glittery, sparkly look, which is not great. However, I'm pretty happy that that's broken up the colours well enough. Well, this just goes to show how often I paint with metallics. Because this is my paintbrush water for metallics, and it's completely dried up. Right, let's get some of these other colours. Red, blue, maybe green wire somewhere. Probably want to avoid that because that will just disappear. But certainly paint brown where the Aquila is, because that'll be gold. Some blue on the wet palette. Let's see if that's still alive. It seems to be. Little blue wire. Little blue wire. So I know a lot of people go on about how Games Workshop has all these amazing models with perfect moulding and no mould lines at all, and it's not a universal truth. This particular part, the Cadian set's fairly good, but this particular part is just impossible to clean up. I've done a few in the past, and it's just easier to not. I do find it interesting that I've worked on 2 comms officers today, because for my Soviets I have actually designed, that's not what I wanted to do. I have designed my own. There is a Soviet kit that has various things: officers, medics, anti-tank team, and radio operator. But the problem is I've got all of those other things, and it's only the radio operator that I didn't have. And so I spent a little bit of time and a little bit of effort, and I've got something that nearly looks like a Soviet field radio. It's a very, very rudimentary version of it, but it's about the right shape. See, I've just noticed all of these mistakes that I'm making with painting. I kind of got really stuck in haphazardly at the beginning and I've just got gaps everywhere. That actually reminds me I do need to run my printer in a bit. I'll do that once the stream's over, but I've got a few things on the way. Yeah, that's good. That's fine. Right, let's come back with the lighter silver. Which is so good that the label fell off. But I know it's silver because I painted silver on the lid. Yeah, I mean, it's still paint just about. So even though this is a lighter value paint, because it's less sparkly, sort of far more consistent metallic, it should be able to make the metal look a little more like metal and less like glitter. But I don't actually need a complete coat. Kind of about half and half seems to work relatively well, particularly upper surfaces and edges, like using it as you would normally use a highlight does seem to make it work. Although one thing I've noticed that I haven't done, that I should have done by now, is the black wash on the uniform. Usually I get that done fairly early so that it has time to dry. You still there, chat? Haven't heard anything from you in a while. Have I dropped offline? I don't think I've had a catastrophic failure on a live stream before. Probably due one. I think the last time, okay, it's working still good. I think the last time I had a big problem with the stream was when I set up OBS to do Back to the Brush with dual audio. Fancy dual audio, look at that, how cool that is. because of the way that it works, you set each input to go to a different, like you set up outputs and you set up each input to go to a particular output. And then my live stream, having not been changed, was using the default like output 1, and my 2 outputs for the dual audio were using like outputs 2 and 3 or 3 and 4 or something like that. Don't actually remember. But that was a fun one that I fixed on stream. I think Fox Limits, if you're still around, you were the only one on stream at that time. Anyway, it's fine. I'll mess something up eventually. Don't worry about it. Look forward to it, in fact. Right, this guy has bionic eyeball, and so the classic colour for bionic eyes is sort of red. I've got a little bit of red left. I'm not sure if it'll work. It seems to be. Yeah. That is maybe if I give that a couple of coats, maybe that will work. Let's give it a second to dry. Let's do the Aquillas while that dries and then come back to it. I'm not sure if it's that metallic paint is just flaky and bad, or whether it's just that I've painted a couple of non-metallic metal models recently and I'm just kind of used to that style. Well, that's all the gold I need. Is there another Aquila? Gun helmet. Yeah, that was it. You know what? That has actually, that is quite distinctly red. So I think that is enough for the eye. Yeah, Fox Limits. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna disappear off of the stream, absent without leave, I believe that's called. There is not much life left in this paint. This is my wow. The lid's actually wedged on. I can't even unscrew it. Can we get a camera view in there? Almost certainly not. That's a mixing bowl in there. But it's not actually moving because it's just solidly caked in. I think this paint has very little life left in it, which is probably impetus to me to finish off the Gaunt's Ghosts for no other reason than the cloak highlight colour is running out and I can't really get that paint anymore. I mean, you don't really need to use the same paint. I've proved quite a few times that if anything, varying your paint, varying the paint can. There's a mutiny happening in my chat. I'm drifting off a frame. There we go. See, I did get another light green, knowing that this was on its way out. I did get another light green to take over from this. Unfortunately, my replacement light green is an extremely different light green. Ah, are you a bot? There's a bot turned up. Well, if you enjoy the stream, you're more than welcome to make comments, and no one click on that link. Guaranteed it's some awful something or other. You know what? I'm feeling excitable. Let's go and let's paint that dial. Now, how do I do that? I don't have a cat, so demanding cat content is a little pointless. Right, so that's a lot of. Thank you, Foxy Mitts. There's a lot of grey paint mixed with water there to try and get like a background for the dial, which sort of works. And then I'll come back in and paint the needle, probably in red, just because that's the one that's going to stand out the most. Brown, green, blue. Yeah, it's gonna be red. But because I watered that down so heavily, that's gonna need a hot minute to dry. So in the meantime, let's do some skin. What could we, the chat, demand from Ed? Good question. What could your mutiny be? Paint wet on. I mean, I do like wet blending, but this is something I've noticed about 3D printed stuff from my printer. And remember that my printer's a 1K screen, so it's pretty low res. Wet blending doesn't work. Just straight up, wet blending does not work on one of my lights is flickering. That's because something is resting on the USB. There we go. That should not be flickering anymore. I shall assume that that is a link to Tenor. Which one's Tenor? I can't actually remember. But some Imperial Guard with cat ear heads. Cool. Yeah, 30 minutes. I'll still be on. See if I can finish this model in 30 minutes. Because looking at the time, we've been here an hour. Usually it takes me all of half an hour to paint a ghost. But this one, like I was gonna have, right, I've got 4 models in front of me. I was gonna say, let's see if I can paint all 4 in the 2 hours. But apparently, I'm so interested with this comms pack that that's not happening. One thing about painting catechins, or at least catechin arms, is that it is very good practice at painting skin, and I am bad at painting skin, so practice well spent. What I'm trying to do with each muscle and kind of bulbous bulge on these ridiculous arms is to avoid painting in the recesses so that my pure base color, that kind of light brown, is always visible at least somewhere. Few layers over the top. Have I ever even finished one model on livestream? That is entirely unfair. Yes, I have finished models on livestream. I've only built one model on livestream. So it's really only the painting stuff that I do on stream. Why am I... Hang on, I'm using the wrong brush. And you do take great enjoyment in... Yes, great efforts go into the distraction. Anytime I paint ghosts or the Soviets, they're pretty quick to paint. 20-30 minutes for most of them, not this one obviously. But I tend to finish several, in fact, in one stream. And when I did build one model, that the tank, I finished building the tank, and that's what I had intended to do. I'm going to have to move to a different part of the wet palette because that is starting to tear, which is not good. I do have somewhere. I've been making some tank riders for the tank. One of the historical uses of transporting troops on tanks. Generally speaking, anywhere that there's a military with a tank and also infantry, which is pretty much all of them that ever had tanks, will have like soldiers, infantry sitting on tanks and saving their legs the hard work of walking. However, the Soviets did things a little differently and actually involved a doctrine of doing so and worked out not just that you can do it, but how to do it effectively and efficiently and to the best effort. And therefore, in bolt action, one of the unit types for a Soviet army is tank riders, so I wanted to make them. That's a long-winded way of describing that, but there it is. Is that another lump in the paint? That's not good. Because this is a fresh part of the wet palette, so I can't even blame it on... We drop focus again. Please. Dinner tonight? I've already had dinner. Time zones, mate. You're well behind. What did I have for dinner? I can't remember that long ago. It's been at least an hour. Oh yeah, we had some roast duck. So, roast duck, carrot, parsnip, swede, some sweet potato, all roast up. Roast duck, you fancy. It's not so much me being fancy, it's just my sister really likes duck and so she keeps buying it. But yeah, I like duck. Probably my favourite meats would be either duck or lamb. Probably make this the last highlight for the face. And got some on cheek rest, which should not be skin coloured. It's dry already. Where's my brown? Where did I put any brown? Yep, that's good. Right. Let's get interesting. And with that highlight colour, mix in some blue. Let's get some tattoos going on. So let's go for a spiral triangle. And you almost certainly won't be able to see this first layer because it's too close to the skin tone. It's very pale blue, but I will be bringing up some more blue. Don't think I've really got the spiral part of this spiral, but I got the triangle sorted. It's more of a rhomboid, but oh well. Some nearly almost Celtic, but not really, markings going on there. Let's do something I'm more familiar with on the other side. Can sometimes be a little difficult keeping the right mix of 3 different paints. So a double stripe with then some simple curls. good. Maybe another one. A more simple kind of wavy pattern. I'm going to have a lot of practice soon with Pictish was paint, despite them not being war paint, despite them not being from Earth. The Tanith First and Only are, as you well know, sort of based loosely on Irish and Scottish stuff. So one of the things they pick up from the Scottish and a lot of the Celtic stuff as well is woad. I'm actually going to be doing an awful lot more woad war paint soon, because I've got a bunch of I think it's from Warlord Games, Celtic warriors, historical. I think they're for Hail Caesar, kind of old-fashioned war game. I say old-fashioned, it's like 15, 16 years old, so it's not that old. Right, I think we need to go on to the camo pattern now. Yeah, so I'll have probably something like 20 of them. The box is, I think it's 38 or it's 40, it's some multiple like that. And I'm giving some to my sister, I'm giving some to Paul. I'll probably end up with maybe half of them. Unless you want some Foxy Mitts, I can send some up your way if you're interested in some old Celtic warriors. Of course, that requires Paul to come back down to me at some point. That is a horrible mess. Cool. In which case I'll send you up an amount. I can't remember how many is on each sprue, and I can't remember how many sprues. Well, if you make 2 of them, you can do 1 with each tartan and then have them fight. And finally decide which parent is best. Although that is a good point, I can have a better go at painting Colquhoun, because I have some old Bretonians that I painted. Milton. Is that the Jacobite yellow? Kind of the yellow backed ton? Or are we talking like the Royal Stuart? That kind of red one that's everywhere and kind of boring. Making a lot of mistakes with this grey. I think I watered it down too much. Speaking of watered down too much, let's move on to the black. Ah, the black watch, right, okay. Very dark green, right. I find it somewhat interesting with these cameras here, because this one I'm recording on, well, this one I'm streaming from, the model camera view is my just regular everyday phone with Droid Cam on to act as a webcam. But it constantly gets messages, and the vibration from the messages seem to knock the focus off. I have tried the other phone, which is the phone that I usually use for recording video. However, in contrast, that one has some security feature. There we go, that's way out of focus. Some kind of security feature that prevents Droid Cam from working at all. And I've been through the FAQs and all the rest of it for ways around, but short of rooting the phone, yeah, it's not going to happen. Right, we're getting close to being done with this model. Obviously the base isn't, but doing bases on stream can be kind of tedious and dull because it's hard to see what's going on, and it's just me doing some dry brushing, so it's kind of dull anyway. But most of the model whatever that means, Nick. Dropping beats. The music's on a playlist. Some of them are very good. Some of them not so much. Everything on the playlist is from the YouTube audio library. So it's It is what it is. It is as it does. Do I want to have a go at that eye? I think, seeing as I've asked the question, the answer is obviously yes. Let's see if I can get in and paint that eye. Don't much like that angle. Don't much like this angle either. But it's going to have to be that. Well, Foxymits, if you want to go through the YouTube audio library and pick out the songs that are approved by you, well, go ahead. Yeah, that wasn't so hard. I've got the eye. Now let's get a dot for a pupil. That's horribly messy, but that's okay because I can come in with what skin tone paint I have left from the tattoo and yeah, that looks pretty bad, but it's not the worst face I've ever done. What I might be able to do is just grab some of the lighter brown and separate the nose. That actually did help. Seems to be angrily staring at the floor. I mean, the model is leaning forwards anyway, so probably not going to see the face actually thinking about it. You want to be a moderator, Nick? Well, I'm not sure about that. To be a mod, you have to be trusted in this community. Also, you're the only two here, so there's no one else to there's no one else to annoy with the moderation status. Yeah, I can give you mod status, but I can do that off stream. Hey, Paul, you're back. And now that Paul is back, I want to announce something. Ooh, fancy! It's not a big deal, but something that does potentially involve Paul and some videos that he might be in future. And I am writing my own game system that's the announcement. Big fanfare. And I've got some specific models coming. Obviously, I haven't designed my own models. I can do a little bit of 3D modeling, but I'm not good at it. So I've got some models from my bits box, my pile of opportunity, but I've actually got some specific ones on the way. And Paul, you're going to get one of them. And the game system is fanfare, slow drum roll, pause for dramatic effect. The game is a jet bike racing game. And the reason why I've gone for that, or kind of the reason how this came about, is there's sort of really no good racing tabletop games. Like, there's racing computer games and different types of things. Is it a cat? It's not a cat. You can potentially convert a cat to be involved, or paint a cat on the side of it or something. There can be cats involved, but it's not a cat. So there's no really good racing game at the moment, specifically tabletop racing game. The only thing that comes close would be Gaslands, which technically starts as a race, but you always just descend into killing each other and no one actually finishes the race. And so my kind of original idea, my starting point for what has become me writing my own game system, is to try to make a game system that specifically works as a race that you can finish, and you actually, like, you would expect that all of the players would finish the race rather than blowing each other up along the way. And the challenge is how do you make it fun? How do you make, because it's a race, it's all about movement. How do you change movement rules, or how do you write movement rules to actually make them exciting and engaging and different, rather than just you move 10 inches, rotate 45, and then the other player has their turn, they move 10 inches and move and turn 45. I think I've got a fairly good system. I want to play test it first. Nicholas says, like the PlayStation 1 game Jet Moto. I don't specifically know that game, but there's a lot of similar games. The one that I know would be Wipeout. So if it's even remotely like Wipeout, then yes, that. Yeah, wacky races, but jet bikes. It's a little less wacky races, maybe. I was talking with someone about it on one of the Discords, and they said Mario Kart on jet bikes in space, which is sort of the feel I'm going for. There will be kind of two versions. Kind of the basic version and then an expanded rule set version. And the basic version is just a race. So there's no rules for damage, there's no rules for weaponry or anything like that. And one of the things I want to achieve is to have that work. So without weapons, without damage, I want it to be a fun game to start with. Adding on to that is then weapon and damage rules and all of that kind of stuff, because of course there will be damage rules and stuff like that added to it. Well, Penelope Penelope Pit Stop is an interesting one because Penelope Paint Stop is also going to be painting one of the models. So I've actually got 5 models that I could potentially paint that fits. So basically it will be about trying to cheat your way to victory in a wacky races contraptions kind of way. No. The core game, like the simple version of the rules, will be very much a straight up racing game. The expanded version is then the kind of wacky races light. I certainly don't want full on. Sorry, I'm trying to talk and get this paint to work because it's all dried up. Yeah, because even with the weapons and the damage and stuff like that, there is the potential to maybe destroy an opponent. But I want to make it hard enough that destroying an opponent is unlikely. Like, if you stop and set about actually finishing someone off, then yes, it'll happen. But I want to make it far more valuable, far more kind of relevant to the game for you to just get on with the race and finish the race. Going to do a Kickstarter. I haven't a clue. I don't know if me by me lonesome, I don't know if I have enough knowledge and skills of various things to actually get that kind of levels of things started. I think it's more likely that I contact someone like One Page Rules and say, hey, can you put this up for sale? I mean, not necessarily One Page Rules, but there are various things. Like, can you put this up for sale as yours with my name on it? Could potentially... Like, what would the Kickstarter be for? Just writing a far more elaborate rule system, which I do want to do. See, I've got the absolute bare bones. I've got a playable game right now. I've got a bare bones playable game already. And it's things like campaign rules. What's it called in racing? It's not campaign. Campaign would be... Rules and miniatures. Well, I can sell the rules just as a PDF and get certain people to make STLs of jet bikes that they could sell. I guess for a Kickstarter, it could be hard copy, like actually get the rules printed. That would be cool. How much would I need to write? How much would I need to expand the rule system to make it work as a hard copy printed rulebook that has enough in it to make it worth buying? Because at the moment, I am like, this is my notes, but this is one side of A4 with my notes on it. That's kind of the core rules. I've expanded it a bit on my typed up version, which is probably around maybe 2 sides of A4. If I add in like racing season, championship rules to play multiple games together, that could be easily a third page, but 3 pages is not a rule book that people would be happy buying. It would be cool. I forgot about that. I was going to go back, and on his arm there's that little lump. And I think that was just a lump of place. Yeah, that's good enough. A lot of time, sacrifice and dedication. Got to at least half a year of playtesting. Yeah. I don't need Kickstarter for that though. I guess if I pay a test group to, like, I require a certain level of detail when it comes to feedback. Please play the game and give me feedback. Yeah, at the moment I need to think through just how far it can go, like, as a rule system, because I don't think, like, it's not going to be the next 40k. It's not going to be the next Necromunda even. But the thing is that there are so few racing games. There must be people interested in playing a tabletop racing game of some description. As long as it's fun, even people who aren't necessarily directly interested will still like to play because it's a fun game. And because I've made it fairly generic, or I've been fairly fish fooding. I have no idea what that means. Like, the current version that I've written has the term miniatures agnostic right at the very beginning of the what models you need section. Because while I know a few people who can potentially make models to go with the game, yeah, that face came out right. That didn't turn out too bad. And the green on green, it's okay. It works. I can maybe give it a bit of... I forgot a thing that I was going to do. Again, another thing. I was going to paint in that... Where's my good brush? There we go. A little red needle for the dial. I think the biggest problem with me doing it as a more elaborate business thing is that I have no idea. I have no concept of how big idea business stuff works. Self-testing pre-alpha is fish fooding. Oh, okay. Well, I've already played one game by myself just to confirm that the rules work at all, and they do. So I've asked a few people, and I've got a few people that are going to get together on Tabletop Simulator, and we're going to have a go at playing the game against some other people who didn't write the rules, just to see how easy it is to pick up. because that's another kind of factor. Because I understand it, because I wrote the rules, but can another person pick it up and play it with not necessarily minimal effort, but without too much stress? Because there are some game systems, Warhammer 40k 9th, that are an absolute chore to learn and are just unpleasant. But there are some game systems that you can just pick up and play, and that's sort of what I'm aiming for there. So yeah, I need to get some test games in with some other people. I'll use it as an excuse to paint some models of jet bikes. Particularly, I already have an Eldar Viper. I've got some Orc Death Copters. And Dead Zone Enforcer jet bikes. So there's 3 different types of jet bike that I can use for testing. Well, given that I've finished the model and I'm just poking at it now, it doesn't need any more effort. It's had basically an hour and a half just painting this one model, which is more than I usually spend on my Tanith infantry. I didn't even get to the other 3. Look at these 3. These are cool models. Look at them. Look at them. Aren't they cool? I didn't get to paint them. This one has the swooshy cloak. I think that's from one of the reinforcement pack. But I cut the head off and in the software, and I put a different head on because I have loads of heads, and my printer is bad for printing faces. This one's just got one of the original set, I think. But this is why I like using the Catagen arms with Devic's torsos, because I'm not sure if you can really tell, but I've had to hack away a whole bunch of that shoulder pad to get it to fit, and the same there. Anyway, so I'll end the stream in a little bit. If anyone has any more questions about this model, the Tanith First and only other things I'm getting up to, including the jet bike racing game, which is still at its very earliest stage, or anything else that I'm getting up to, including this Wednesday, Back to the Brush podcast will have a special interview with James Broad, talking about the Tanith First and Only Codex, the Fan Codex. We've released the data cards for the alpha kind of test version of that as well. I'm just kind of in the mood for writing rules, it seems. But yeah, I'll leave it for a couple of minutes to see if people want to ask questions, and then I'll run the stream off a cliff and let it die. That was dramatic. I'll press the end stream button as well, actually, do. I've also got this, which doesn't look particularly good because it's so spindly and small and 3D printed on a bad printer. I might give this some metallics, see if that helps it out. I'm not convinced it will. This is supposed to be epic scale, so a person would be 6mm, kind of as tall as the foot of this thing. But I'm struggling to really make it seem in that scale. At the moment, I can barely make it seem like a well-painted model because it's very rough. Well, I don't see any more questions appearing in chat. if you would like questions, you can of course ask next week. Oh wait, oh, you just got in there just as I was closing up. What is my rarest Games Workshop miniature that I own? Probably, I've got Mad Donna Ulantai from Necromunda. That's probably a fairly rare model. It does pop up every now and again, so it's not super rare. It's fairly rare, but not super rare. I also have the 2nd edition Orc Commandos, and I've actually got 6 of them. You don't see them very often. They're probably a little more rare. Oh, and of course I've got the Tanith First and Only, not this one, but the metal ones. I've got all of the original 10, the 2002 set of 10, as well as the more recent plastic set. Those 10, the most desired of those is the one female sculpt that's in that set. But actually, the rarest one is probably one of the generic Tanith Ghost who's aiming the last gun. Of the 4 generics, there's the female one, the running one, the reloading one, and the aiming one, and it's the aiming one that seems to be the most rare or the most hard to find, and I've got one of those. Other than that, not much of the stuff I've got is fairly rare. You could count the Inquisitor stuff, the 54mm scale stuff. That stuff's sort of rare because the game was bad, and back then people weren't as interested in like display painting as they are now. I reckon if they re-released Inquisitor, it didn't even change the rules. They re-released a terrible game, but with 54mm models, I reckon it'd be so much more popular now because people like. There's more of a culture of people painting display style models than there ever was. What? 18, 19, 20 years ago when they released that. The problem with those is that I've hacked them up and swapped parts over. I had Slick Devlin, Inquisitor Eisenhorn, and one of the other ones that I swapped parts between all 3. So I've got rare bits. They're not necessarily rare models, whole rare models anymore. Anyway, that is enough of that. I have some rare models, but I also have other things to get on with today. That's a lie. I just want to go to sleep. Thank you all for popping past. I saw comments from Paul, Nick, and Foxy Mitts. I'm not sure if there was anyone else. Maybe there was. I apologise if I've missed your comments. But thank you to everyone who popped past, and I will see you next week when we will paint something else. Something maybe a little more detailed rather than my kind of speed painted Tanith and Soviets. Or maybe I'll paint some more Soviets, who knows. We'll find out next week. But with that, I will end the stream and I will see you next week. Goodbye.